Imagine you have this repetitive task at work that you always have to do every single day. What if there was a way that AI could possibly do this repetitive task for you to the point where you could, I don't know, kick up your feet and not have to intervene at all? Thankfully, Copilot Studio now has the ability to make autonomous agents, and that is what we are going to do today in this YouTube video. So what our autonomous agent is going to do is when somebody fills out a Microsoft form, I want to pull that information from what was filled out in that form and be able to do a variety of things. Even if it's something as simple as an email gets sent to the person who filled it out or to a person that it pertains to, or a Teams message in that regard, or even create a task in Microsoft Planner. Here's the simple Microsoft form that I have created. What I want to do is I want to ask somebody, what Microsoft tool do you want to take a class on, and when would you like to take that class? I then want to be able to take that information and create a task in Microsoft Planner. Therefore, my bosses can potentially assign this class to somebody here at Pragmatic Works to teach or to talk to this individual about. I also want to let people know that a form has been completed and they should go check Microsoft Planner for that task. Here is my 2-question quiz. What is the class choice? What is the date preference? And what's great about Microsoft Forms is if you go to view responses here, you have the ability to access the Excel file in which these answers get saved to. So I went ahead and opened this up, and here are some of the responses that have come through so far. Class choices like Power BI, Fabric, Power Apps, Copilot Studio. And what I want pretty much is when a new row of information is added, I need that information to go a variety of different places. And the best part, I don't want to have to intervene. I don't want to have to look at this at all. I just want to be notified when the form is done, and I want the task to be assigned, and we are done at that point. What I have done here is I have the ability, since this is an Excel file, I have this in Excel Business. I can go up to File here, and I can share this, and I can copy the link to this workbook. That's going to be super beneficial in the long run. We will come back to this, but it's good to know that your Microsoft form is going to have an Excel file linked to it that is actually saved in your OneDrive. Here I am in Copilot Studio. I am going to go ahead and create an agent, and we're just going to create a brand new agent. I'm going to go to Skip to Configure, and I am going to simply call this agent Class Assignment. Let's keep our description really simple here. Assigns class tasks to Planner and also communicates when a form is completed. I don't plan on using this agent right now for anything other than the autonomous features of completing the workflows that I need done. In the future, I could even connect this to other agents using multi-agent orchestration in Copilot Studio, but for now, let's keep it simple and stick to the topic of autonomous agents. I'm going to go ahead and hit create. Here we are in Copilot Studio. Our agent is going to watch for a trigger. It will then carry out what needs to be done based on the instructions provided. Before we actually start to do this, we need to change some settings because as you can see right here, our generative AI is not turned on. It is disabled. I am going to go to my settings and fix a couple things in here. First off, I want to make sure that generative AI orchestration is on. I want my responses to be dynamic and use available tools and knowledge as appropriate. So I'm going to go ahead and save that change. You can also see in these settings a couple of other cool things that you can turn on. We have deep reasoning right here that's in preview, and we also have the ability to connect to other agents. I have a feeling eventually I'm going to want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this on now and save it. Now that these changes are saved, I'm going to go ahead and close out of my settings, and now I'm ready to get started. First and foremost, my trigger is going to be when a Microsoft form is filled out, when it is completed, and then the actions will happen afterwards. You're going to scroll down to where it says triggers, and you're going to add a trigger here. There are a list of options here. There's also a search option, but I can see right here when a new response is submitted by Microsoft Forms, that's exactly what I want. So that is exactly what I'm going to choose. From here, we are obviously going to have to configure which Microsoft form gets filled out. So I'm going to go ahead and change the trigger name to be more specific. You could have a number of triggers all in the same agent. So you don't want to just leave the triggers and the actions as the words that are already provided. You want to give it a little more context just to be safe. When class picker form is completed. I'm also going to make sure that I am signed into both Microsoft Forms and Copilot Studio. Sometimes though, even if it says you're all good to go here, there's going to come a time later where you're going to have to authenticate in. So just be aware that that is completely normal, where it will happen possibly multiple times throughout this process. I'm going to hit next. Now it's saying form ID. Since it's connected to my Microsoft Forms, it's only going to pull my Microsoft Forms. Now I have a lot, so bear with me here. I'm going to type in pick your class because that is exactly the form that I want. I am going to leave use content from body and I am going to create this trigger. Now the trigger is a very small step in the entire process. All of our big events that are happening in this process are called tools. Tools were previously called actions. So if you think of them in the concept of action or a task happening, that is a better way to describe it. But we are going to use tools to actually complete what happens after the trigger has launched. It says time to test my trigger. I actually can't test it yet because I have nothing happening after the trigger, but we will get back to this in a second. You can see under your triggers when class picker form has been completed is there and it's good to go. The next thing I need to add are some tools, and there are a variety of different tools that I'm going to need in order to make this work. I am going to need to pull the information from the Excel file first and foremost. So let's start there. I'm going to go up to add tool, and I am going to start with Excel Online for Business here. I'm going to go ahead and select this, and it's going to list all of my tool options from within Excel. The first thing I need to do is I actually need to pull that information before I can actually do anything with it. So I am going to list rows present in a table is going to be my first tool. Let's go ahead and add and configure so we can make sure it's pulling from the right Excel file here. Now that our tool is up, I want to make sure I change something in the name here so that's a bit more specific of where it's pulling this information from. So list rows in pick your class table. I may do some other type of tool that has to do with an Excel file and listing rows. I want to make sure I'm being specific here. I'm fine with the description as follows, and I can see the connection is through my work account, so we're good here. Down here, this is where we are going to put where this location is, where this is located. Right now, it all says dynamically fill with AI. I actually can't have that. I need a specific place, so I'm going to drop this down and I'm going to choose custom value. Now it's going to give me a drop-down option here, and I can click into this and up is going to pop a bunch of different options I have. One that I need is OneDrive for Business. All of my others here are SharePoint sites. So I'm not pulling from a SharePoint site. I'm actually pulling from my OneDrive because that's where Microsoft Forms Excel files are saved. So I'm going to go to my OneDrive for Business. Document library, I'm going to once again change to a custom value, come in here, and I want to choose my OneDrive again. Now the file, also a custom value, and now I'm going to search for my specific Excel file. Mine is not in a folder anywhere, but if you keep it somewhere, you're more than welcome to, but I can see your pick your class Excel file right here, and that's what I would like to use. Last is the table. I'm going to do a custom value here. I do have a couple options within here. I have a forms table and a forms table. If I go back to my Excel file, I actually did launch this one into the Power Query editor to change my very first column, my ID column, to a numeric value. You're more than welcome to do that. I was messing with some other Power Automate flows to make this do what I wanted it to. I did that, but you can connect to either table. I'm going to connect to my Power Query table for the time being. But once again, you do not have to launch it into the Power Query editor unless you need to for some reason. Down below, you'll see a completion. If you drop this down, these are all the outputs that are available. There's not much, but that's okay. I'm going to leave this as is, and I'm going to save this tool. Now that that is saved and ready to go, I need to make another tool. So I'm going to go back to tools and I'm going to add another one. I listed rows in a table. Now I actually need to get a row in that table. So I'm going to go back to my Excel and I am going to choose get a row. And I'm going to add and configure again. Get a row. I'm going to change this to pick your class so I know exactly what table it's pulling from. Once again, I'm going to link this to my Excel file so it knows exactly what it's going to pull in. I'm going to change all this, custom values, same location as before, pulling in that same exact information that I had ahead of time. So my last two ones are a little bit different than my last tool. I do have a key column. I'm going to need to use my ID column from that because that is where each one is individually numbered. So that is my key ID column right there. Using that ID column, Microsoft Forms automatically makes that column. You may just need to switch it to a numeric value because most of them are going to be a general data type. I did change mine at some point to numeric because it worked better at a point in Power Automate flow. I think I can find it perfectly fine here. For key value, I'm going to leave it to dynamically fill with AI because that is going to change throughout. So I'm going to leave that as is, and then I'm going to hit save. Amazing. So now we already have two tools created because what I have so far and what I want to happen is when a Microsoft Forms is submitted, I want it to list all the rows present in the table, and then I want it to get a row for me. Next step in this process, I want to create a plan in Microsoft Planner. I would like to create a task in Microsoft Planner with the name of the class that's coming through and hopefully also a start date. So the date that they preferred. So the second question on my forms, I'm going to go back to tools and we're adding another one. This time, let's go ahead and type in the word planner. And here are all my results for Microsoft Planner. You can see the cute little logo that is there. First, I need to list plans for a group. So I am going to list plans for a group right here. Add and configure. Make sure you have Microsoft Planner already set up and ready to go at this point if you're following along and doing this as well, but you do need to have something already created. So list plans for a group. I'm going to go ahead and change this. List plans for class picker is what I'm going to go ahead and call it. It needs this group ID. Once again, I am going to have to do a custom value for this. It is going to be linked to my Microsoft Planner. So I'm going to need to make sure I have that ready to go. And I'm doing my Learn with the Nerds Copilot Studio group here. Once you have that put in, that's all you have to do. Go ahead and hit save. Next part of the process is to actually create the plan. So let's go back to tools and we're going to add a tool. I'm going to try Planner once again. And this time we are going to choose Create a Task. Add and configure. Change the name, create a task, class picker. And now I need my group ID, my plan ID, and the title. I am also going to add an input here because there's another bit of information that I want to come through my Excel file. We'll get back to that in a second. Let's start with the group ID. This is going to be another custom value. So what group is going to retrieve the plan? I'm going to pick my Learn with the Nerds Copilot Studio again. And then the plan ID, I'm also going to do a custom value. And it's my training schedule plan right here. This is the plan that is under the Learn with the Nerds Copilot Studio part of Planner. So I'm going to keep that. Now, title, I'm going to dynamically fill with AI because it's going to pull that information from the Excel that's coming from Microsoft Forms. There's another input that I actually want to add. So I'm going to add an input. Now you can see there's a couple options in here. If you scroll through, these are all the different inputs that can go through to Microsoft Planner. The one I want is the start date time because the date that they prefer is the day I would want this task to start. So that's what I'm going to choose. I'm going to leave those to dynamically fill with AI. Go ahead and hit save. So far, we have 4 tools in place. And I know it seems like a lot for just such a small thing to happen, but just think about it. Once you have this up and running, you're never going to have to go in and manually do this again. Ultimately, what I want to happen at this point is when somebody fills out a Microsoft form, my agent is going to pull that information from the Excel file and create a task in Planner for me. Head back to over.